What's up, guys? Here with another breakdown. Tonight I'm going to be previewing a Mountain West conference showdown between the top two teams in the Mountain West, the number 18 San Diego State Aztecs, facing off against the unranked Boise State Broncos. The Aztecs are 14-2 in conference and sit atop the Mountain West standings, while the Boise State Broncos come in 12-4 in the conference, and they are just behind the Aztecs in second. Um, both these teams look to be NCAA tournament teams, but a win here for Boise State would go a long way in getting them into the tournament. And to start the breakdown of the game, we'll just talk about a few factors. The first matchup between the two being one of them. And that first matchup was a decisive win for the Aztecs at home. This game is going to be played in Boise, Idaho. So San Diego at home in that game, if you look at it, shot a staggering 67% from two. And when you look at the breakdown of these teams, you'll see that Boise State is actually top 50 in the country in defending 2-point field goal percentage at 47% allowed per game. So pretty staggering difference in that. And when I break down games and I look at previous matchups, I try to look at some of those things. If there's a big difference between a team's average and a team, the way they performed in that game, that might be a good indicator that things might come back closer to normal in the second matchup. And I think that's the case here. It's a 20% difference between what Boise State is used to allowing from two and what San Diego State shot from two. You look down at some of the other numbers. As a team, Boise State, 2 of 18 from the three in that game. They tend to shoot the ball better at home. A very good home team on the year are the Broncos. That's just 11% they shot in that first matchup against San Diego State. They shoot actually closer to 36% on the year. They're a pretty good three-point shooting team. Not one of the tops in the country, but a solid number. Another big difference, right? We're talking 25% difference between what they shot and what their average is. 63% from the line that game, and on the year they shoot right around 76%. They're a pretty good free throw shooting team. So a couple of numbers there team-wise that were big differences in that game compared to the averages, and then you obviously flip home court advantage, and that those numbers could easily get a lot closer to those averages on the season. When you look at some of the matchups in that game, Nathan Mensah, one of the starters for San Diego State, led them in scoring. He's actually their seventh leading scorer. He averages just 7 a game, but he had 17 in that one. That's a 10-point difference between his average and what he normally gets and what he had in that game in the first matchup against Boise State. He also shot 9 of 12 from the free throw line in that game and 5 of 5 from the field. When you look at free throws, he's actually a 61% free throw shooter at home. On the road, a 71% free throw shooter at home. So he shot a little bit above his own average at home at 75%. And on the road tends to shoot a significantly worse percentage from the free throw line. So if he does get to the free throw line again, I would be surprised if he shot that high a percentage. And then from the field, 5 of 5. At home, Mensah 61% from the field. On the road, 45%. Significant drop-off on the road. So one of the key factors in that game is unlikely to have a repeated performance like that. When you look at some of the other breakdowns, one of the key things I saw was Max Rice, the best guard for Boise State, averaging 14 points per game, and is their best three-point shooter. On the road, shoots just 32% from three, and at home, 48%. So when you think about that number in comparison to the fact that Boise State really struggled to shoot the ball in the first matchup, and they're actually a pretty good three-point shooting team, I like them to shoot the ball better tonight. And I think one of the reasons why is that Max Rice is going to have a big game. I think he's going to be able to get free from beyond the arc, although San Diego State does do a good job defending the three-point line. And I'll let that lead into a little bit of a breakdown just in terms of what these two teams look like. Boise State and San Diego State are two very similar teams. Both the teams rank in the top 15 in the country in defensive efficiency. Boise State is 11th and San Diego State is 12th. San Diego State is the slightly better offensive team. Boise State and San Diego State both in the top 100 in offensive efficiency, but Boise State sits about 45th and Boise State 87th. But when you look a little deeper into the numbers, you'll notice a couple things defensively. Although San Diego State is one of the better defensive teams in the country, they actually only rank in the top 70 in one of the four factors defensively, and that is offensive rebound percentage allowed. They are top 70 in offensive rebound percentage allowed. But when you look at the Broncos here do not crash the boards on offense all that much anyway. It's not something they rely on. They are 250th in the country in offensive rebound percentage as a team, and that's because they tend to get back in transition. They're not crashing the boards hard. So one area that San Diego State would like to lean on, it's their best of the four factors defensively, according to the metrics, and it's something that Boise State just doesn't need to win. And so that's a key factor as well. Both teams defend the three-point line really well. I mentioned that earlier. Both hold opponents to under 30% from the three-point line. San Diego State's slightly better in that area, top 10 in the country. Boise State is top 20 in the country. But both teams do a good job defending the three-point line. But I think all in all, the most important thing about this isn't any of these metrics. They're all important. But I think it's the spot here. And that's why I'm going to go with the Broncos tonight, and actually already have. Boise State 14-1 at home on the season, and you can see their only loss at home came. It was an upset, but they lost. It was the first game of the season when the Broncos were struggling mightily. However, since then, 14 straight at home for Boise State. San Diego State is a very good road team, and that is something to note. But when you look at the entirety of the spot, the Aztecs are coming off a very emotional game. They played New Mexico on the road just a couple days ago on Saturday. And despite having a 5-point lead with under a minute to play, lost the lead and had the ball with under 5 seconds to go, trailing by one. And it took a buzzer-beating three for the Aztecs to come out victorious. Really emotional game, up and down game. The environment in New Mexico and the pit was wild, and huge win for the Aztecs because it basically sealed their fate as the conference champions. Now they're having to travel on their second straight road game, which they haven't done very often. Only one other time this season have they had back-to-back road games. And these aren't two areas that are really close together. They're not insanely far, but you're talking a good chunk of space in between New Mexico University and Boise State. So this is kind of a far travel. The game on Saturday was a late night game. So they likely did not get in to Boise, Idaho until Sunday afternoon. And so very quick turnaround, having to play another road game against the second best team in the conference, who plays really, really good at home. And then add in the last factor, and I think this tips it over the edge for me, and that's that San Diego State has basically all but clinched the conference title, right? They've clinched a share of the title no matter what happens. They're already Mountain West champs. But they play Wyoming at home their last game. And so no matter what happens in this one, Wyoming, not a very good team, outside the top 150 in KenPom rating. That's a game that Boise State's going to be a double-digit San Diego State's going to be a double-digit favorite in. And they've basically clinched the Mountain West title. Boise, on the other hand, fighting for a spot in the big dance that they're likely to be in. However, they definitely are playing for some seeding. This would be a big win for them. And they're playing to have some shot at a championship. If they win and somehow San Diego State would lose to Wyoming, they would have a chance to clinch. But this is a more meaningful game to Boise State tonight. And I think that's why we've seen some line movement, and I'll get to that now. When you look at the line, as I showed on the screen earlier, Boise State is a 2.5-point favorite. That actually opened last night at 1. And I actually jumped on it at 1. I saw that. I knew it was going to move. I've talked about this before. Getting numbers early and beating the market is really important. So I've already got a couple things in on the Broncos at -1. Now, this is obviously my official pick is going to be the Boise State Broncos. I'm gonna grade it at the number that I got it. Um, we can count it as a money line, -1 110, or minus whatever the money line is now for grading purposes because I want to keep my number. But I do still like it at 2.5. I would like it a whole lot better at 2. That the half point is unlikely to matter much, but with two really good teams in a game that could end up being close, San Diego State's played some close games this year, as is Boise State. San Diego State pretty good on the road. I would, if possible, if you can get -120 on the buy to 2, I would feel more comfortable at 2. If you can get that. If you see any 2s available, I would go ahead and jump on that. But I do like it at 2.5 if you don't want to buy the point. I think the Boise State Broncos are going to win this game. I think they'll win it by a couple of possessions. And it'll come down to free throws late for them to extend that lead to from 5 or 6 to maybe 7, 8, 9. But you never know, that half a point could matter. So official play for tonight, we've got the Boise State Broncos -1, -2 if you can get them on the buy to -120, and I like them still at -2.5. So hopefully we can get to the window with this one. We're 9-4 on our first 13 breakdowns. We hope to make it 10-4 tonight, and go Broncos.